And today we're going to be making 5 simple, easy, delicious, and nutritious snacks for your kiddos, for your whole family. Some of them are going to be as easy as grab and go, so that once they're made, they're very convenient for you to keep on the go or grab and use on the go, regardless of what your schedule looks like over the next couple of days. And these are also going to be school friendly snacks, so you can actually reuse these recipes in a couple of weeks when all the kids, if and when the kids return to school, so that you've got a couple more snack options to add to your menu. All right, so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm actually just going to make my screen nice and big so I can see everybody here. If I can just figure this out. Like that. Nope, not that one. There we go. Okay. There we go. And okay, so I've got my handy helper here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with actually a very simple meal or very simple snack here, and that's just going to be roasted chickpeas. Now, the really cool thing about roasted chickpeas is that you can flavor them in whatever way works best for you and your family. So whatever seasonings your family likes, which also means that you can mix it up every week. So if you added this to your regular rotation of meals, you could easily mix up your snack options just by changing out the seasoning. And they're really, really nice because it's very much like you know, like eating like a cracker or eating nuts and seeds, just because they're very crunchy. And when they're loaded with a good flavor profile, then you've got a really handy, delicious snack that kind of satisfies that snacky feeling that we get. And of course, because they're going to be bite-sized for our kids, like finger foods, that makes them more appealing. So I really, really like chickpeas from a standpoint of nutrition as well, because they're really, really high in iron and a really great source of plant-based protein. So really great all around and very versatile type of bean. All right, so what we're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and get your oven preheated to 400 degrees. You know what I'm going to do for you guys? I'm actually going to share my screen for you so you can see the recipes and the ingredients as we follow along. And so you've just got a little bit more, you're not just hearing me, but you can read also what I'm doing here, if that helps for you. So each of these recipes is going to have enough servings for 2. Now, of course, that depends also on the age of your family, so your children that you're feeding. Here, it's 3 cups of chickpeas for 2 servings, so that's more like an adult. 1.5 cups of chickpeas is a very large snack size for an adult. So for a child, maybe around 4, like mine here, I'd be looking at 1/3 to 1/2 cup as a serving, and then her age, so 4 year or maybe even like 6 to 10, I'd be looking at maybe 2/3 of a cup. Anything over 10 years old, I'd be looking at maybe 3/4 to a cup, which would be equivalent, very similar to an adult serving as well. If you were going to pair this with, you know, a piece of fruit or some veggies of some kind as a snack just to pair it up, then you would require less of it. If it was going to be the only snack, then I would increase the serving size. Just see, we have some questions coming in here in the chat. How much chickpea is that before cooking? All right, so if you're working with dried chickpeas, basically chickpeas will almost double or almost triple in size. So if you start with 1 cup of dried chickpeas, by the time they're done cooking, you're going to have about between 2.5 to 3 cups. So I would start with 1 cup dried, and that'll get you pretty close to what this recipe calls for. I actually did start with dried chickpeas, and I had just, you can see they're draining in the sink. I had prior to, they were ready for today's workshop. So I've already drained them. Drain them, rinse them really well. Yourself at home, drain and rinse really well. And then I just want you to have them dry so that they're not very, very moist. And then put them into either your baking pan that we're going to need or into a bowl. I'm just actually going to use my baking pan because I don't want to make more dishes than is necessary. But in the meantime, also go ahead and set your oven to 400 degrees to preheat it, okay? Here, I'm just going to pat dry all of my chickpeas, roll them around, just squeeze them a little bit just to make sure they're really dry. And now, if you start rubbing them too much, the skins of them will actually come off. which can be a bit of a pain when we're roasting them just because we have little pieces that burn and crisp. That's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and put them into my baking pan. Thank you. All right, so once they're in your baking pan, we're just gonna go with 1 tablespoon of olive oil. And I'm actually, sure, so my daughter's gonna help me here. I'm actually gonna only use 1 teaspoon because I'm only working with 2 cups of chickpeas instead of 3. Go ahead and pour that in. So drizzle the olive oil all over your chickpeas and then just give them a really good stir so that the oil is well incorporated on your chickpeas. Can you stir all of that, please? Perfect. Okay. And we're gonna sprinkle, so this recipe here calls for a tablespoon of poultry seasoning. So if you don't have that on hand, you could use garlic, you could use dill, you could use paprika, you could use chili and lime. So whatever kind of flavor profile that your family enjoys. Okay, that's a lot of salt, honey. We're gonna stop there. So 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So go ahead and shake that on there. One more time. Perfect. Okay. Now I don't actually have any poultry seasoning, so I'm just going to do a mixture of the types of spices that I know in my family we enjoy. So I'm going to do 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. Okay. Yeah, not yet though. Then we're going to do 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. Okay. And then just 1/4 teaspoon of oregano. There you go. Okay, put that in there. And you can go ahead and stir that with this one here. Just stir really well, make sure that they're really well incorporated so that they're evenly coated and you get a good flavor across the board or for some of your chickpeas. Perfect. Okay. And stop. All right. So go ahead and put those in the oven right now. And your spices. So in the oven at 400 degrees, and we're going to keep it in there for about 30 minutes. And in the meantime, we're going to actually make all the rest of our snacks so that by the time we are done these, everything else, or by the time we're done everything else, we're just about finished. All right. So sorry about that. Okay, stop please. Is the oil to hold the seasonings onto the chickpea? Yes. Yeah. So if you are eating an oil-free diet, you could use just a little bit of lemon juice or lime juice, or even just a bit of veggie broth would work too. I don't actually use a whole lot of oil in my house. So this is actually the first time I'm using oil in a while. And it's really just because I do like that crunchy seasoned factor that it brings to the chickpeas. So totally your preference for how you want to do that. Okay, is my sound better now? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put these in the oven, 400 degrees, and then we're going to move on to our next recipe. All right, then we're gonna just move this over here. So I have a convection oven, and it actually, like, I find the fan is very loud, so I try not to keep my computer near it when we're doing these, then it's hard to hear. Okay, so the next we're gonna make are actually some dark chocolate granola bites. So these are a lot of fun because they're basically like a mini muffin, but loaded with really good nutrition. So it makes it fun for your kids to eat it. You kind of have that peace of mind knowing that your kids are getting something healthy, and even though it feels like they're getting something like a treat. So in this case, we only need the oven at 300 degrees, 350 degrees. So we're just going to leave that because we already know it's preheating at 400. So this will actually shorten the baking time by just a little bit. So go ahead and grab yourself a large mixing bowl. A large mixing bowl.
Yeah, large mixing bowl. Mixing bowl here.
Okay, please stop.
Okay, yeah.
Is that a set recipe like Italian seasoning, poultry seasoning? Yeah, it's similar. It's a mixture of, I think, sage and garlic and possibly some rosemary. I'm not entirely sure of what's in a poultry seasoning. I generally just make my own based on how I'm feeling on the flavor profile that I'm looking for, which was why I'd mentioned like there's a lot of different flavors you could go for. Like chili lime is a really great one if your kids like spicy food. But even just like a dill or lemon is really nice. Balsamic is another nice one. Salt and vinegar even you could do. So instead of using the oil, you could just spritz your chickpeas with some white vinegar, sprinkle with some salt, and then bake them like that. That's a really, really nice treat too. So it's a really great alternative to like salt and vinegar chips with a much healthier aspect, right? So yeah, just switching out the types of seasonings that you use or what you have on hand. Right? Like I never tell anybody go out and buy something special. Just use what you have on hand. So, all right. So these dark granola bites. So we're gonna start with our mixing bowl and
Mixing bowl.
thank you. Grab yourself a spatula, and we're going to start with. There it is. Okay, so half a cup of maple syrup. Put that into the bowl, along with 1 cup of sunflower seed butter. Now, if you don't have sunflower seed butter, and the reason I use it is because that makes it school safe. So it's not, because it's a seed butter, it's not a nut butter, it's generally safe to bring to school. But if you don't have that on hand, you could use peanut butter, or you could use tahini, which is another really great alternative. I really like tahini because it's high in iron and calcium. So it's a really great plant-based source for your kids to get a little boost of energy and nutrients from. So those would be my options. Otherwise, you could also use things like cashew butter or almond butter, whatever you have on hand for butters. But just keep in mind that if you want it to be school safe, then sunflower seed butter, wow butter, or pumpkin seed butter, or tahini would be your best options to bring to school, okay? Go ahead and get that half cup of maple syrup into your bowl. Go ahead and pour that in. And we're gonna go ahead and put our 1 cup of seed butter. I'm actually gonna be using peanut butter. Okay. Peanut butter.
Don't have the peanut butter on the gun.
No, you can't have peanut butter. That's fully right. So 1 cup of that.
2 cups.
That's because this is a half a cup. So we need it 2 times to make 1 cup. So if your kids are struggling with fractions, this is a fantastic way to give them a little bit of hands-on experience in dealing with fractions. Thank you. Yes, so Sarah, in the recorded replay email, I'll be sending the recipe booklet here that I'm following along from. All right. Oh, perfect. So she's gonna scrape it all out of the cup there. Okay, so once you've got your nut or seed butter and your maple syrup together, just go ahead and stir them really well together.
Mom?
No. So just stir it so it's well incorporated. And then we're gonna go ahead and add in all of our dry ingredients. So that is gonna start with 1 cup of rolled oats or quick oats, 1 minute oats, whatever you have on hand. What will not work is steel cut oats for this recipe. So you wanna make sure you've got oat flakes. No, honey, we still need it. So 1 cup of oats added into your liquid mixture. Then 3/4 of a cup of unsweetened coconut flakes. Then we're gonna put in, nice, okay,
I'm mixing some.
perfect. Then we're gonna put in some dark chocolate. So you can use chips or chunks. I do recommend using unsweetened and making sure that it is fully dark chocolate. The recipe itself will be yes. The recipe itself will be sweet enough that you don't need sweetened chocolate for this recipe. So just using an unsweetened one is at least a great way to give your children. It's good, no honey. They're gonna feel, like I said, they're gonna feel like they're getting sweets, but really they're getting a plant, like a whole lot of nutrition in this. And dark chocolate is really high in antioxidants, really high in iron as well, and even protein. Funny enough, right? So you can go ahead and add. So here says 142 grams. So anywhere between, I'd say, between 1/3 and half of a cup would be appropriate.
I put some in.
Okay, put that in there too. So we've got about a half a cup in there. Then go ahead and add in a 1/4 cup of raisins. So I'm missing. There. They were hiding on me. Sorry. Yes. Then we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of cinnamon.
I did one.
I know they're good. We're gonna do one more because that was a half a teaspoon. Okay. A 1/4 cup of flax seed. So you can use whole or ground for this. I'm actually going to do half of it, so 1/8 of a cup of ground flax seed. And then I'm going to use 1/8 of a cup of hemp hearts. And that's just because I want to increase the protein in these bites, and I want to increase the omega content. So another 1/8 of a cup of hemp hearts. You don't have to do it this way. You can just follow it exactly to the recipe. Oops. And then a 1/4 cup of chia seeds. Go ahead and put them in. And then stir it all very, 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 very well. Okay, so this is a great question. So it says, if you have sweetened chips, could you reduce the maple syrup, or would that affect the recipe too much? So the maple syrup does add a lot of liquid to the recipe that is needed for it to hold together. So if you're using sweetened chips, you can reduce the maple syrup. I would just increase the amount of nut butter that you use by just slightly. Right now, actually, as soon as this is mixed.
Can I put it?
Yes.
Are my hands like going to be sad?
Yes, your hands will be dirty.
Oh, you and me. You can be spots to me. I put it in.
All right, so just make sure that it's really well mixed.
Yeah, mix like that.
It should start to kind of clump together and hold well.
Can I eat it?
Yeah, you can eat it like that. So that's a really cool thing about these types of recipes, that you can eat it raw and not have to worry about any safety issues.
It's good now.
It's good. All right, so how much of a reduction would you recommend? All right, so we started with a half a cup. So I would say you could probably go down to, I would say 1/3 of a cup. So that's only really a couple tablespoons of reduction. You could probably go down to a 1/4 cup, but I haven't tested the recipe yet, so I wouldn't know for sure whether or not it would hold together well once it bakes. Yes, I'm just gonna go ahead and mute everybody here. Sorry about that. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and add the granola to a mold. So you can either use like a muffin tray. Yes, honey.
You make it wet and I put it
Oh,
all
we're just gonna stuff it in there and pack it down. We'll grab a spoon. Yep. Okay, grab a spoon. So I'm just using a mini muffin tray. I want to make sure these are nice and bite-sized for her. I don't want anything too big. Okay, perfect. So what we're
Can I
going to
lick
do,
this spatula?
wants to lick the spatula.
Like it.
I know you can. Okay. You can lick it after. Okay, so just go ahead and grab large spoonfuls, pack it down into your muffin tin with the back of your spoon. So you can see here, I'm just packing it down. You just want to make sure that it's going to hold together really, really well. Now, one note, because you're asking about reduction of maple syrup. If you reduce the maple syrup to say a quarter cup, perfect, thank you. Keep going. If you reduce it to a quarter cup, you could increase either the chia or the flax and add a bit of water. So this would require you to make a vegan egg. So either like a flaxseed egg or a chia seed egg to help hold it together so that it stays together after it bakes. So that's an option for you if you want to reduce maple syrup content to by half, okay? And I would say just one chia or one flax egg would be sufficient enough for this recipe. So I'm just gonna tip my thing down here so you can see what we're doing here. We're just packing it into, she's filling the cups and I'm packing them down.
You can feel them.
Yeah.
It's like you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
My hands are dirty.
I see. Her hands are dirty. To that one. So we're only gonna go as high as the top of the muffin hole, okay? So not higher, not on the edge, just like that, okay?
I put it in there.
Mm-hmm. So you'll have enough here for about 18 mini muffins, maybe even a little bit more. So I'll actually have to do this in 2 batches, but you'll see because I just have a 12 hole tin. But if you had one that was larger, yes, but then you can't put your hands back.
I won't.
Okay, go. So I'll have to do 2 batches, but if you had a larger,
It's good.
I know it is, honey. If you had a larger muffin tray, then you could do more at once, or if you had several. Or of course, you could do larger muffins. You could do a full-size muffin if you wanted as well. That's your choice. I just like the mini ones. It's just easier to control portions that way. Just because she's so young. If she was older, I would do the full size and not even now you think about it. But she's just young, so it just makes it easier. Because what it means is I can, when these are done, I can put these into a container, store them in the fridge, and then she can go in when she's hungry and get her own snack. I can tell her she can have a muffin and I don't have to worry about how much she's eating. So it just gives her that independence, gives me that peace of mind, and just requires a little bit less interference or yeah. Okay, so these are done. You can see they're well packed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those in the oven with the chickpeas. And we're just gonna keep an eye on them to make sure that they are not burning, but basically we're gonna keep them in for about 10 to 15 minutes. So go ahead and pop those in the oven once your muffin tray is full. Okay, so see, we've got another question. Okay, love that you're making efficient use of the oven by baking them at the same time. Thank you. Yeah, so I hate spending all day babysitting stuff, so I always start with the things that take the longest that can work on their own while I do other things. So I generally try to arrange my recipes that way when I'm doing any sort of meal prepping. So even during the week, each week when I do my meal prepping, I start it the same way. Whatever requires the longest time gets started first so that it's out of the way and I don't have to think about it. And then by the time I'm done the rest of my prepping, everything is complete and I just have to let it cool and put it away. Just saves me a ton of time and peace of mind, and it's great though. And it also means that my oven is not tied up all day. So I can go ahead and start supper when I'm done this and not have to worry about timing all of that. So yes, honey. Okay, we're ready to make our next recipe? Cool.
Yes. That's what I want to say.
That's what she wanted to say. She was ready for the next recipe. Okay, so our third one is going to be some edible chocolate chip cookie dough. Okay, this one is really fun, a really great snack. What can you replace with maple syrup? Great question. So yes, we need chocolate. I'm just going to answer your question first. Okay, so great question. So if you're not vegan, you can use honey. If you are vegan and you want to avoid maple syrup as well, you could use bananas and then just 2 very ripe bananas, and then just make sure that you are making a chia or a flax egg to help hold it all together, because you won't have that much liquid. So that flax or chia egg will help hold it all together. And of course, yeah, you're right. Applesauce and pumpkin puree are another really great ones. I really like applesauce. So no flax seeds. Okay, yeah. So chia seeds would work okay for like an egg type binder. But applesauce is a really great one too. Yeah. So I would do applesauce then. So that would work too. Honey and condensed milk are fine too. Okay, so our chickpea, our cookie dough here is a really, really delicious snack. Great way to either have some, like you could eat this for breakfast, snack, dessert. You could make these in tiny little jars so that you can give them out as gifts. Like they're really, really great, okay? And nutritious. So they're a guilt-free type of snack. That you really don't have to stress about how much your child is eating, as long as you're just monitoring how much, what your ingredients look like. So what I've put together here for our ingredients are pretty simple, very basic, and they're not going to be loaded with a whole sugar. So they're not really going to give your child that energy spike and crash. They're really going to more be loaded with really good nutrition. So healthy fats, really, really healthy proteins. And again, here we're using chickpeas. So singing Christmas music here. So again, chickpeas are really that versatile, right? So the really cool thing is that they have a very mild flavor. So using them in these different types of recipes is a really cool way to increase, using your plant-based proteins if you're headed in that direction. Using up a can of chickpeas you may have in the pantry that have been sitting there that you don't know what to do with. So really, really, and it also means like you don't have to stress about whether you have these types of ingredients on hand. Most of the time, a lot of us have at least 1 can of chickpeas in the pantry. And if you don't, now I encourage you at least always have 1 in the pantry, so that when even us ladies, when those cravings kick in and you're thinking, oh, I just need something really sweet, you could whip this up in 15 minutes and have it done, and guilt-free, nutritious snack and dessert that isn't really going to harm or counteract any of your health goals. Okay, and the same thing goes for our kids. So we're going to go ahead and start with 1 cup of cooked chickpeas. Just make sure that they're well drained. If you don't have chickpeas, you could also use white beans. So I have here just a jar of cooked white beans. They're like a white navy bean. Again, they're also very mild in flavor. So if you didn't have any chickpeas in hand, you could easily swap this recipe for these. So I'm actually going to use these. I have chickpeas, but I'm actually going to use these just to swap it up because I like variety. So you're going to need a food processor for this one, or a really, really, really great blender. Yes, we need that. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drain these. And I'm going to keep 1 cup and just rinse out 1 cup of these beans. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and just get our food processor. You can see I'm just using a very small one. I don't keep anything complicated. It's very simple. It's just an S blade that goes in the center, top goes on, and then I've got an attachment with a button, and it's on or it's off. So Very simple. So we're gonna go ahead and put our beans into our food processor. Then here again, so a 1/4 cup of sunflower seed butter, or peanut butter or tahini, almond butter, cashew butter, wow butter, whatever kind of nut or seed butter that you use at home is a great option for this. Of course, depending on the one you use, it'll change the flavor a little bit, but never a bad thing. That's just variety. So again, I'm going to use peanut butter. I have sunflower seed butter, but I'm trying to save it for her school days because it's school safe. So I figured I'll use up the peanut butter today. So just a 1/4 cup of that goes into this mixture. And I'm just reusing my 1/2 cup measuring spoon or measuring cup from earlier, and I'll just go halfway. You gonna help me with this one? No? Okay. In the bathroom. This is a slow process. Sorry about that. With slow moving peanut butter. Okay. Go ahead and put that into your food processor as well. Then we're going to go ahead with 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Again, if you don't have maple syrup, you could use honey. You could use a liquid stevia if you have that. Some bananas are a really great option, and I'm actually going to be showing you in a little bit how to sweeten things with bananas. You could also use dates as a sweetener. So as an FYI, backtracking a second here, this last recipe that we made, those granola bites, you don't have to put this into a muffin tin to make muffins out of them. You could actually spread this nice and thin on a baking tray and bake it and have homemade granola. Okay, really healthy, great granola option. You could add some more, like some pumpkin seeds. Some pumpkin seeds or some sunflower seeds to that, some almond slivers, dried fruit. So it's a very versatile base recipe that can be used in a lot of different ways, right? All right, so then 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, and I'm gonna eyeball that. So 1 and 2. 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Again, I'm gonna eyeball it. Got a 1/2 teaspoon on hand, go ahead and use that. And then we're just gonna blend all of that together until it's really well incorporated. So you wanna make sure that it's nice and like really smooth. You wanna push the button? No? Okay. I think she's done helping, so. You're all done? Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna mute myself while I blend this so that you don't have a ton of background noise here. I can find my mute button. Sorry, hang on. There it is. And okay, now it's nice and smooth. So I'm just gonna transfer it into a bowl. And then we are going to add a 1/4 cup of dark chocolate chips, and you've got yourself some edible chocolate chip cookie dough. Just tip this down so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Yes, Anna? What? Parce que j'ai le lavé. Yes, Anna? Oui. So The really cool thing about using the white beans instead of the chickpeas in this recipe is that they are really high in calcium, in magnesium, and folate. So they're higher in content, in nutrient content, than chickpeas in those nutrient areas, whereas chickpeas would be higher in iron. So depending specifically on what type of nutrients you specifically need, or that you're targeting, then you'd be able to swap that out accordingly. So there's that, and we're just going to go ahead and add a 1/4 cup of those chocolate chips that we had earlier. And use a combination of both. Of course, yeah, you could, for sure. You could definitely use a combination of the chickpeas and the white beans. So, Elaine, I don't know, are you plant-based, or are you specifically trying to build some nutrient levels in your body? So I do want to just mention that calcium and iron compete for absorption. So what that means is if you're eating something that's high in both, you may actually reduce the likelihood of you absorbing either one of them very well. And so what I often recommend is if you are trying to build a certain nutrient in your body, anemic, okay, so anemia would be building iron. If you're trying to build iron levels, then I would avoid foods that are higher in calcium for a couple of hours around the foods higher in iron, if that makes sense, okay? Because if you're trying to be very specific about it, you want to make sure you're avoiding that absorption competition, all right? So just go ahead and mix those chickpea, or those chocolate chips, there we go, okay, lost my words, into your cookie dough. Put that into a bowl and put a lid on it, because that's all done. That's really cool, right? Of course, you can lick your spatula. I lost my helper, so she's not doing it, which means more for me. That's really good. Okay. We're going to put that aside and move on to our next one. If you want, you can go ahead and just take a quick look at everything in the oven. Just make sure that everything's looking okay. Maybe depending on how your oven heats, you may have to roll your chickpeas around just a little bit to make sure they're getting evenly roasted. So just everybody have a look at those real quick, all right? Hey, Anna. All right, so we actually have 2 minutes left on the 30-minute timer from starting our chickpeas. So we're doing good. My chickpeas look good. My granola bites still have a ways to go, but they're doing all right too. Okay, so our next one is hummus dippers. These are one of my favorite snacks of all times, because they're super simple and such an easy way to add more vegetables to your routine. So here's what I love about them. Okay, you put them into a small jar. This jar holds 1 cup. Okay, and you basically have a super easy grab and go snack that is ready whenever. So I actually like to have a bunch of these made up every week and stored in the fridge. We're more likely to eat our vegetables when it's super convenient to do it. This makes it honestly super convenient. So just grab yourself, if you don't have any small mason jars, just use a container of any kind that works best for you. But all we're going to do here is we're going to add 1/4 cup of hummus into the bottom of each jar. Let's put this down so you guys can see again. So you can measure your hummus, or you can just eyeball it. Basically just into the bottom of your jar. And then I'm going to do a second one. We're going tobogganing today, so should have made 3 actually. We're going tobogganing later today, and it would have been nice to have a snack like this actually ready to go, but actually I think I will make 3. Make the 3rd one after, since I've got everything out. Okay, check your chickpeas. because that was 30 minutes in the oven. So check on them, make sure that they are ready and done. If they're not done, just leave them in there. If they are done, take them out. Look at our chickpeas again. So my chickpeas finished. Okay. They're really good too. Okay, so I've taken them out of the oven. I've turned the oven down and put a timer on for another, I think, 15 minutes for my granola bites. But if yours weren't done, leave them in there and just keep going, and we'll just keep checking on them. Okay. So we've got our jars with hummus in them. I want you to grab all your crunchy veggies that you and your family love to eat. So whether that's celery or cucumbers or zucchini, broccoli, whatever type of crunchy veggies you have on hand that your family likes to enjoy, grab them and cut them into fun sticks, just like that. Okay. Make sure they're no taller than the height of your jar, because basically all we're going to do is we're just going to stand them up inside of the hummus. This is great because you're really only dirtying like one dish, right? Once these are done. So you could even eat these at your desk at work. Your kids can eat them at school, after snack, or after school, in the car, after sports, whatever the case is. On your way to the grocery store, on your way back from Christmas shopping, whatever, right? So I'm putting some celery in there as well. I already happen to have these chopped just from my meal prepping workshop that I did last week. So that's done. Again, another handy reason to do some meal prepping at the beginning of the week. It makes food simple. And I'm going to go ahead and add some cucumber sticks in there. So I've got carrots, cucumbers, and celery. And I'm already all out of my peppers, or my chopped peppers, so I don't have any of those. But I think that's good enough. We're just going to call it a snack just like that. Okay, so then you just throw your lid on, and you have a really simple, easy grab and go snack. So we're going to put those aside. And then we'll move on to our next one, and I'll just pause because I see there's another question. What is hummus? So hummus is a blended sauce of chickpeas, garlic, tahini, a little bit of lemon juice, and sometimes oil, salt, and pepper. So it's a Mediterranean dip. I can show you here. It's so funny. I don't actually normally buy hummus, but it was on sale, and because I'm hosting my close family in the next few days, I was like, I better just grab some extra. So basically it just looks like that. This one has roasted hummus or roasted garlic on top, but it's just a dip and a spread. Really great for veggies, crackers, chips, pitas. You can make a really simple wrap with it for lunch. So just using a tortilla wrap, spread some hummus on it, load it with some veggies, and wrap it up, and you've got a simple lunch. Can you please type the ingredients again for hummus? Yes. So chickpeas, tahini, lemon juice, garlic, salt and pepper, and then sometimes oils. So sometimes some people like to put a little bit of olive oil into it because it'll really help make it just a smoother dip. If you don't use oil, so like I said earlier, I generally don't use oil. I use it very, very little and seldom, and I don't use it in my hummus. So if you're not using oils, then you can just use a bit of water, or even the water that comes in your can of chickpeas, the aquafaba. You can use that to help water it down and make it a smoother dip. Tahini is just blended sesame seeds. That's all it is. You can find it in the Middle Eastern aisles in the grocery store. It's generally with like the curries and the coconut milk and that sort of thing. All right, so we're gonna move into our next recipe here. This one's really fun, okay? So again, if you tend to find that you get, a lot of chocolate cravings or sweet cravings, so it's cool, right? Like you can see how all of these recipes are super simple, and they feel and taste like desserts, and yet they're packed full of nutrition, okay? So that's one of the really cool ways that I like to actually eat at home on a regular basis. Like this is a chocolate avocado pudding. Avocado has such a mild flavor that when you've got some cocoa powder in there and some milk and a little bit of sweetener, it becomes such a decadent dessert, and yet you could eat it for breakfast. So one of the really cool things about plant-based eating actually is how versatile it really is. So we're going to move into this recipe. So what I want you to do is I just want you to either clean out your food processor or just go ahead and get yourself your blender. Either one, okay? I'm going to switch over to my blender so that I'm not standing here washing dishes while we're talking. I'm sure you didn't come here to watch me wash dishes, right? So I'm just going to switch to my NutriBullet. So I'm just going to use the cross blades and my 2-cup blender cup. Okay, I'm just going to clear some space here though, so we've got a bit of space to work with. Okay, that's a little better. I've got a little bit more counter space here. So basically, grab yourself a knife, a cutting board, and 2 avocados. Now, if your avocados are nice and ripe so that they're a little bit squishy, that's okay. As long as they're not like brown or moldy, you're good. In fact, the squishier they are, the better, just because you're going to be blending it. So it just makes it a lot easier process. So go ahead and cut your avocados it out. Scoop one of your entire avocado into your food processor or your blender, whatever you're using here. And you guys, we're almost done. This is so cool, right? If you want, just go ahead and take a quick peek at your chickpeas if they're still in the oven, and at your granola bites again as well. I have mine on a timer and I trust my oven pretty well, so I think I'm okay. But I may take a quick peek in just a few moments. So again, oh, sorry guys, you can't even see what I'm doing here. Sorry. Okay, so here it says 1 1/3 avocado. You could just do 1 1/2 to make it easy and simple. It's just because this recipe is normally for more people, and I condensed it down just so that we would have consistency in how many servings every snack makes. There we go. Okay, so avocado into your blender cup. Now, earlier I mentioned that I'd be showing you how to sweeten things with dates and bananas, okay? So this recipe calls for 1/3 of a cup of pitted dates. This is gonna be the majority of your sweetener, okay? So I actually had already soaked them just to rehydrate them so that they blend really, really well. You can easily forego the dates and just add a whole ripe banana. And what I'm actually gonna be doing is I'm gonna be doing both, just because. I enjoy that flavor, but I'm not using a full 1/3 of a cup of dates. I am gonna probably only use probably about a quarter cup. I soaked a third, but I'm going to use only a quarter cup. And then I'm going to use a full ripe banana. I like the banana flavor in my avocado pudding. It's just my personal preference, but it's totally up to you whether or not you want to do that. So my country avocados that I bought always spoiled. How to know it's a good one? Okay, so avocados will ripen very quickly if they're left on the counter, and even quicker if you have bananas near them, okay? So if you want to slow down the ripening process, put them in the fridge. One of the best ways to know is that, so all of mine here are actually good. Like they're ready to use pretty much now. So basically when you're holding it, I'm going to try and get good lighting here for you guys. Okay, so when you're holding it, when you hold it upright and you find that little knot in the top, just tip it out. If it tips out very easily and you've got, you can see there, it's like, it's not green and it's not brown, it's just kind of a neutral color, your avocado is ready, okay? And then you just give it a squeeze and you can feel that it's soft but not mushy, it's ready. The ones that are very, very, very green on the outside and very, very firm, they're not ready. They need a little bit more time. So if you wanted to ripen it quicker, put it on the counter, put a bunch of bananas over top of it. It should be ready in about 12 to 24 hours. So little neat trick there, right? Okay, so you've got your avocado in your, I'm using both my avocados because avocado pudding is really popular in my house. I like probably that whole bag of avocados will become pudding actually. So that's how popular it is in this house here. And there's only 3 of us. Okay, so all of it into your blender cup, and then go ahead and add either your dates or your banana or both. So I'm going to add both. So sorry about that. I've got a ripe banana. You can see that it's starting to brown on the outside, and on the inside it's pretty decent. I'm not going to use the whole banana. I think just half of it. This was a pretty big banana. I normally buy smaller ones. So half my banana, and then about a quarter cup of my soaked dates. So this recipe is super forgiving. You can go more, you can go less in terms of your dates, your bananas, your avocado. Like the avocado is kind of the base of it, so I wouldn't go less of it. If you wanted to make more, by all means, add more. So there's what my blender cup looks like so far. And then we're just gonna go ahead and add a little bit of maple syrup to this. Now, you can totally forego the maple syrup in this recipe if you've added a very ripe banana. So because I've got dates and a banana, I'm only adding 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. I don't need the full 1 1/3. It's just too much, too sweet for me personally. But if you really, really like sweet foods, or your kids really, really like sweet foods, go ahead and add the 1 to 2 tablespoons. And we're gonna go ahead and add some milk. So whatever milk is your choice at home, you can go ahead and add that. So here the recipe calls for 1/3 of a cup. Basically what we're doing here is the milk is what's going to help blend it and provide a consistency. So if you like really thin pudding, add a bit more milk. If you like your pudding very thick like a mousse, use a little bit less. Just know that you're going to need enough of it to blend well and consistently. Okay? So I've added half a cup, like mine a little bit thinner, and I did add extra avocado. Then you can go ahead and blend that. So I'm just going to mute myself again so you guys don't hear the blender background, and then we're going to add some chocolate to that. So go ahead and start blending. so now we have a very thick, I can show you a nice thick pudding consistency, but it's green. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add that chocolate to give it that chocolate flavor. So here we're actually just using raw cocoa powder, okay? Because we've already got a sweetener in there, we really don't need to use a sweetened chocolate. Just a raw cocoa powder is fine. So 3.5 tablespoons for this recipe. You could do more if you prefer a richer chocolate flavor. Yeah, so in the picture, that's a date. So on the left side of the picture is the pudding. On the right side of the picture, that's what a dried date looks like. So for this recipe, you want to make sure that there's no pit in them. So you can buy them pre-pitted. The Bulk Barn sells them if you're here in Canada. Otherwise, you can buy them in bulk at like Whole Foods and Costco, places like that. Even most grocery stores will sell bags of pitted dates. With the pit, you're going to have to take the pit out in order to blend them. The pit is quite large. Oh, finally that shut off. Okay, it's quieter now. There we go. Yeah, but that's basically a date. And it's a dried fruit, basically. So, okay, so there's our pudding. I'm gonna go ahead and add 3 to 4 tablespoons of raw cocoa powder. So I just buy mine at the Bulk Barn here in Canada. So go ahead and add that into your pudding, and then we're just gonna blend that again. So I've got it all piled on there, and you'll see once you blend it, it becomes a very rich dark color. Okay, so I see a question here. Any good substitute for avocado? I don't like avocado. Is it the flavor that you don't like? Because in this recipe, you don't taste it. It doesn't taste like an avocado. It really does taste like a rich pudding. So if it's an allergy, then you could do apples. Maybe you wouldn't have quite the same consistency. You could do bananas, but generally bananas and avocados fall into the same latex family. So an allergy from one, you'd have an allergy with the other as well. But in this recipe, you don't taste them. It doesn't taste like an avocado. So I'm just going to mute this again while I blend it, and then you guys will see the finished pudding. Okay, so look at this, you guys. Isn't that awesome? So it's really, really, really tasty. Of course, you can add more sweeteners to it if you required that. I personally don't. If you wanted, so if you really like sweet foods and you were tempted to add more sweetener, I would actually recommend adding 1 teaspoon of cinnamon before you try adding more sweetener than what's in the recipe. Cinnamon has this really cool trick where it tricks our brain into satisfying the sweet craving without actually giving into a sweet desire. So really cool trick. So adding some cinnamon to your recipe can actually help satisfy that sweetness. Banana, yeah, banana too, of course. All right, so there we go. And I heard that my little granola bites were done in the oven, so I'm going to pull those out too. So I'm just transferring, actually, I'm going to transfer this to a bowl first. Sometimes I actually just keep it right in my blender cup because I use the magic bullet. I can just put a lid on the cup and throw it into the fridge just like that. But Today I'm kind of feeling like I want to put it into a container so that at least you guys can see all these finished recipes really well. I'm going to put them all side by side for you guys so you can see them. Okay, there's our pudding. Okay, so go ahead and grab your granola bites out of the oven. And then here's what I'm going to do for you guys. Stop sharing my screen. Those are all our recipes. I'm going to bring this over so you guys can actually see all 5 of these recipes completed. So we've got our roasted chickpeas. When you're going to move the wheel, on our kind of stickers, really cool, right? So again, all of these are super high in nutrients and nutrition and iron and protein and calcium and hiding a little bit of veggies in there. Really, really great way to just simplify things with your family, let them feel like they're having something really sweet and dessert-like, but gives you that peace of mind so that you don't have to worry about what they're eating either. So I hope this workshop was really helpful for you guys. I'm wondering, do you guys have any other questions? You guys have been asking like super great questions today, actually, but do you have any more before we wrap everything up? Just head over to the chat box again here. What is the texture of the chickpeas in the first recipe like? Okay, so when they're done, they would be crunchy, crispy. So similar to, similar to popcorn, but more like those crunchy corn kernels that you can buy. So it's nice because it's a great replacement for potato chips and those types of snacky snacky foods that we tend to buy. So a nice crunch, like a dry crunch. So you can store all of these in the fridge. So all of these recipes you can make ahead of time, put them in containers, store them in the fridge. They're all going to be just as fresh as the day you made them for about 5 days. The only ones where I would say that would need maybe a little bit of requirement would be, yeah, you're right. The granola bites can definitely store a lot longer. The chickpeas, the longer you keep them in the fridge, the more moisture they're going to begin to retain. So they'll soften. So if you want to make them crunchy again, make them hard again, then just pop them in the oven for a quick roast again before you eat them, if you find that they've lost that crunch factor from being in the fridge too long. But otherwise, everything else would keep in the fridge for at least a week. And you're right, the granola bites would store a lot longer, and you can actually pop those into the freezer too. So those you could easily, like as a family, make a huge batch together, and you can make them as mini bites, you can make them as muffins, you can make them as bars, you can put them in a full size baking pan and then cut them up after you've cooked them or before you cook them, and store them in the freezer for later on. So and like I said, you could also turn it into a healthy granola breakfast, right? So some really cool ways to use that recipe for sure. So are there any other questions? Scrolling back to make sure I've answered all these questions. Yeah, the chickpeas, they would be hard when they're done. So hard and crunchy. Let's see here, awesome healthy recipes. Thank you. Oh, you guys are so welcome. Okay, if you have any other questions that you think of, feel free to connect with me on Facebook or my website. Hope there's more in the future. Oh, Angie, I'm always doing workshops like this. Usually, so I don't know if yeah. Okay, so sorry, let's backtrack here. I will be emailing everybody the workshop workshop replay. So if you wanted to do this again, or you wanted to follow along because you didn't today, you'll be able to do that. In that email, there will also be that whole recipe book that I've just followed for you guys, so that you can follow those along and you'll have the recipes on hand. I also, I'll also give you guys links to follow me on Facebook. Usually what I do is I post my events and my workshops on my Facebook page, or even like my profile, like my public profile one, and on my business page. So if you wanted to be in the loop on the types of events that I'm hosting similar to these ones, those would be the best places to follow me. I don't always email out all of my workshops, so just following me on Facebook would be the easiest way to stay in the loop, okay? So I'll make sure to include all of that information for you guys in the follow-up email after today, which I'm going to try and send out later today, but it'll probably be this evening when I get around to it. I do have to jump into some coaching calls, and then I promised we'd go sledding this afternoon. So, but thank you all guys so much for being here. I really appreciate you guys following along with me. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to just reply to my email when I send it out. I'm always quick on my emails and getting back to everybody. So have yourselves a fantastic Monday, and good luck to all of you on making your recipes. And of course, have yourselves a very happy, very healthy holiday season. Bye, everybody.